What if the most powerful message you could ever send is no message at all? Imagine the strength it takes to stay silent, to walk away without a single word, without a dramatic exit, without giving her the reaction she thought she controlled. No revenge text, no late night breakdown, no subtle posts aimed at her. Just silence, cold, clean, and unshakable. No, because you're weak, but because you've chosen peace over chaos. Silence becomes your strategy, your shield, your statement. It's not emptiness, it's precision. It cuts sharper than anger and echoes longer than words ever could. She expected drama. She expected you to spiral, to crumble, to show her how much you cared by fighting for what was already lost. She expected the pattern to play out the same one she may have even created. But this time, something was different. Something broke. And it wasn't just your heart, it was her illusion of control. She thought she could leave and still be in your world. That she could hurt you but keep your attention. That your emotions would remain on call whenever she felt curious, bored, or lonely. She gambled that you'd still be there when her other options didn't work out. But you vanished. Not in rage, not in desperation, in quiet, confident distance. And that silence it struck harder than any outburst ever could. Most men respond emotionally. They over-explain, chase, and beg for understanding. They send long messages pouring out their pain, hoping she'll finally get it. But the Stoic man? He doesn't play that game. He feels the pain, sure, but he doesn't let it define him. He doesn't hand over his dignity in a desperate plea for closure. He doesn't need to be seen or validated to move on. He simply lets go. Because silence, to a Stoic man, is not weakness, it's wisdom. It says everything without saying a word. It tells her, you made your choice. I'm no longer available. I have nothing left for you. My energy, my time, my heart, it's no longer yours to access. That's the closure. That's the boundary. And that boundary is brutal in its clarity. It doesn't yell, it doesn't beg, it just stands firm, untouchable. She'll feel it when you stop showing up, when her notifications stay quiet, when her posts don't get your views, when the name that once reassured her disappears from the sidelines. That absence becomes a void, and that void becomes uncomfortable. Because she was used to having access. She was used to feeling power through your attention. But now, she's left with space, empty, quiet space where your validation used to live. And that's where the regret begins. Not because she loved you deeply, but because she thought she could leave and still keep you close. This isn't about revenge. It's not about playing games. It's about power not over her, but over yourself. It's about turning heartbreak into strength, learning emotional self-mastery, and building a presence so unshakable that your silence becomes the loudest energy in the room. This is where stoicism meets deep transformation, where letting go becomes dominance, where detachment becomes a new kind of control. So let me ask you again, what if the strongest thing you could ever do is nothing? If you're tired of being an emotional backup, if you're ready to take back your power and rebuild on solid ground, then hit that like button, subscribe to the Stoic Room, turn on notifications, and comment below. I release what I cannot control. Now let's begin. Every message you send after she's walked away is like a thread keeping you tied to someone who already let go. You may think those words will bring closure, offer clarity, or spark something inside her, but the truth is, they just confirm one thing. She still has your attention. That's why silence isn't just a passive reaction. it's a powerful decision. It's the moment a man finally understands that his energy, his focus, and his presence are not for those who treat him like an option. Silence is what happens when he stops performing. It's the clearest message you'll ever send without saying a single word. When you go silent not to punish, not to manipulate, but because you've reclaimed your dignity, the power dynamic shifts instantly. You are no longer reacting. You are no longer reaching. You are no longer available. And that absence, that stillness, begins to roar louder than any argument ever could. She notices the silence, not just in the quiet, it shows up everywhere. In the mornings when she doesn't see your name, in the posts that go unliked, unviewed, in the lack of double taps, DMs, or random check-ins. That void where your presence once lived becomes deafening because she didn't expect it. She thought she could leave and still keep your energy orbiting her world. But your silence denies her that comfort. It forces her to face the emptiness she created. And here's the difference between a stoic man and the emotional crowd. The stoic doesn't go silent to get a reaction. He goes silent because he's truly done. He's no longer interested in the performance, the drama, the chaos. He's chosen peace over confusion, clarity over closure. His silence isn't a strategy, it's a standard. He doesn't chase. He doesn't explain. He simply removes his energy and watches everything shift. This silence isn't emotional warfare, it's self-respect. You're not ghosting. You're not trying to make her suffer. You're detaching from what no longer feeds you. That's strength. That's control. When she realizes there are no breadcrumbs, no signals, no open doors, that she can't reach you with nostalgia or guilt, it hits differently because she's used to noise. She's used to a reaction. She's used to knowing that no matter what she does, you'll always be there, even if it's in the background. But when she gets nothing, when she's left with silence, that's the one thing she can't spin. She can't fight with it. She can't argue her way through it. And she definitely can't forget it. If you're done being emotionally available to someone who made you a backup plan, say it with conviction. My silence is my strength. Comment it. Own it. Because this is how you reclaim your frame. Pain only grows louder when you try to control what was never yours to command. You can't force someone to love you. You can't logic your way into their heart. And you definitely can't convince someone to stay who's already halfway out the door. That's not your job. That's not your path. Most men get trapped trying to fix what they didn't break. But the stoic man, he stops chasing what drains him. He stops attaching his value to someone else's presence. You only control two things in this life: your actions and your mindset. Everything else is noise. When you stop trying to change her, you finally begin to change yourself. You no longer perform for her attention. You no longer beg for explanations. You stand tall in your own energy, grounded in your own code. And suddenly, her absence doesn't shake you, because your worth was never built on her approval. You've chosen the path of inner command. You've taken your power back. And from here on out, your silence speaks louder than ever. You've stepped away from the chaos. You've quieted the noise. And now something deeper is awakening the force of your presence. Before a single word leaves your lips, she already feels it. That unspoken tension, that quiet magnetism, that command of space that separates boys from men. And one of the most powerful, yet often overlooked tools in male attraction is this: your voice and presence. Not just any voice, but a slow, deliberate, calm voice that resonates with quiet authority. Science backs it up. Studies repeatedly show that men with lower, steadier voices are seen as more dominant, more reliable, and more attractive. It's not just a quirk, it's evolutionary. A deep, measured voice signals control, competence, and strength. But your voice is only the beginning. Real presence isn't about how loud you speak, it's about how deeply you're felt. Women are instinctively drawn to men who carry themselves with purpose. Think about it when you walk into a room. Are you rushing, fidgeting, checking your phone? Or are you grounded, unshaken, completely at ease with yourself? A man with true presence doesn't perform. He exists. And that energy fills the space around him. He moves slowly, intentionally, with his shoulders relaxed and his gaze steady. He doesn't shrink himself. He expands without force. And when he speaks, he doesn't rush through his words or fill silence with noise. He chooses every word like it matters because it does. Confidence isn't just what you say, it's how you stand, how you pause, how you listen. It's the eye contact you hold without flinching. It's the space you occupy without apology. And most importantly, it's the comfort you radiate from being whole, whether anyone validates it or not. Now contrast that with weak presence, nervous gestures, inconsistent tone, poor posture, darting eyes, too much talking with too little substance. These are signals of insecurity, and women pick them up even if they don't consciously realize it. They just feel something's off. They sense the tension, the inner disarray, and as a result, attraction fades. Why? Because attraction at its core is about safety and mystery. A man with presence feels like both. He's safe because he's in control of himself, and he's intriguing because he doesn't need attention to feel valuable. She doesn't feel like she has him figured out, and that's what keeps her attention. And here's the deeper truth. This kind of presence isn't about being perfect, it's about being centered. A man who accepts who he is, who owns his space without overcompensating, naturally draws others in. So don't chase validation. Don't try to impress with noise. Instead, let your energy precede your words. Let your stillness speak louder than any attempt to prove yourself. Because in a world full of distractions and performers, the man who is fully present stands out without trying and becomes unforgettable. That's the kind of presence she can't shake. And that's the kind of man who never has to chase. But presence alone isn't enough. You also need the power to walk away. Not with drama, not with threats, but with calm certainty that speaks louder than any words ever could. That's the paradox most men miss. They believe that holding on tighter proves devotion, that chasing shows commitment. But in reality, what shakes a woman to her core is when a man can walk away not out of spite, but out of strength. There's something undeniably attractive, even haunting, about a man who can love deeply but still choose himself when the line is crossed. He doesn't slam doors, he doesn't make scenes, he simply disappears from the drama and reclaims his peace. And that silence, that quiet exit, it's the loudest sound she'll ever hear. Because women are used to men begging, explaining, fighting for a second chance. They're not used to a man who values his self-respect more than her attention. She expected you to cling. She expected you to circle back. But when you didn't, when you just stopped showing up, it flipped the entire power dynamic. Suddenly, she's left with a question. What if I was wrong? And that doubt grows louder in your absence than your presence ever could. The truth is, a man who can walk away owns himself fully. He knows his worth isn't up for debate. He doesn't use distance as manipulation. He uses it as confirmation that he refuses to beg for what should be freely given. Walking away isn't about playing game sits, about setting the final boundary. It tells her, if you can't respect my value, you lose access to it. And here's where most men fail: they stay too long. They wait for closure that never comes. They explain, hoping to be understood. But all that explaining just proves they haven't let go. The Stoic man doesn't chase understanding from someone who already made the choice to misunderstand him. He lets his absence speak the final truth. And ironically, that's when the tables turn. That's when she starts to reflect, to notice, to feel the space where your energy used to be. Because a man who can walk away without emotional chaos leaves behind something far more powerful than anger. He leaves behind mystery. And mystery breeds desire. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're no longer trying to be gotten. You've reclaimed your energy, your time, your peace, and that kind of self-possession makes her wonder what she truly lost. So if you've been clinging to the idea that holding on will bring her closer, ask yourself, what would happen if you let go completely? What if the most attractive thing you could do was walk away without a word and never look back? Not to make her chase, but to make space for the man you're becoming. Because the moment you stop trying to prove your worth to someone who couldn't see it, is the moment you finally start embodying it. When a man lives without a clear mission, his energy gets scattered. He starts to seek direction from external things, from attention, from validation, from women who sense his neediness before he even speaks. But when that same man locks into a purpose, into something bigger than temporary emotions, everything about him changes. His energy shifts from wandering to focused, from reactive to intentional. He's no longer pulled by every emotional tug. He becomes centered, unmoved by drama, and guided by an inner compass no one else can alter. And that shift doesn't just change him, it changes how everyone, especially women, see him. Women are naturally drawn to men with purpose. It's not about money or status, it's about direction, presence, and unshakable clarity. A man with a mission doesn't need to explain himself. His actions speak louder than words. He isn't constantly available because his time has value. He's not chasing her, not because he's playing games, but because he's chasing something far more meaningful, his own destiny. And ironically, that's exactly when she starts chasing him, because purpose is magnetic. It speaks to a primal part of her that craves safety, leadership, and vision. When she sees that your world doesn't collapse in her absence, when she realizes that your ambition keeps burning even when the romance fades, it triggers respect and curiosity. She starts to wonder who you're becoming and what she might be missing out on. But here's where most men fail: they lose themselves in her. They put her at the center of their universe, hoping love will be enough to fill the emptiness where their mission should be, and that's when she starts to pull away. Because deep down, no woman wants to be your everything. She wants to admire a man who already has everything going for himself. A man whose life is so full that she feels lucky just to be part of it. That's the paradox. The more you make her the goal, the faster you lose her. But when your goal is growth, when your mission fuels you more than her approval, she sees you in a completely different light. You're no longer another man looking for a savior. You're the storm she didn't expect. You don't fall apart when she walks away because your foundation isn't built on her attention. It's built on your code, your work, your path. And when you live like that, truly live it, not fake it, she can't help but watch. Sometimes from a distance, sometimes with regret, but always with a sense that you've become something she never expected. A man who doesn't just survive heartbreak transforms through it. So if you're still clinging to the idea that love is your life's purpose, take a step back and ask yourself what kind of man you want to be when no one is watching. That's where your mission begins. That's where the attraction becomes inevitable. That's when you stop trying to be chosen and start choosing the life you were made for. There comes a point where you stop asking why she did it and start asking why you tolerated it. That shift changes everything. You begin to realize that healing isn't about getting answers, it's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that you gave away too easily. When you're deep in pain, it feels like all you can see is what she said, what she did, how she left. But the real transformation happens when you start using that pain to build something within you. Most men stay stuck because they think pain is the enemy. They try to numb it, avoid it, distract from it. But the truth? Pain is fuelif. You know how to transmute it. And transmuting pain isn't about pretending you're fine. It's about letting that fire burn away the weakness you once called love. The man who uses his heartbreak as a mirror doesn't just recover, rebuilds. Stronger, smarter, sharper. Every unanswered text becomes a reminder of his silence. Every night she didn't come back becomes a lesson in detachment. Every tear becomes a declaration. Never again will I give my power away so freely. That's the beginning of the alchemy. You take what was meant to break you and forge it into armor. You take every ounce of disappointment and channel it into purpose. And the irony? She feels it. Not because you posted about it, not because you sent her a long emotional message, but because she feels the shift in your absence. The man she once knew, the one who would have begged, apologized, compromised, he's gone. Replaced by a version of you she can't access. And that version, the focused, elevated, emotionally unshakable version, is what haunts her far more than silence ever could. Because now, you're not just gone, you've grown. Pain, when faced with honesty and discipline, becomes your personal trainer. It teaches you what you truly value. It strips away illusion. It forces you to get clear on your standards. She didn't just break your heart, she revealed where you were still asleep at the wheel. Now you're awake. Awake to the games, the patterns, the places where you gave your power away thinking it was love. But love without self-respect isn't love, it's self-abandonment. And you don't do that anymore. You're done handing out energy like it's worthless. You're done lowering your standards just to be chosen. You're done shrinking yourself to keep the peace. You rise now. With every workout. With every book you read. With every hour you pour into your mission. You risen not to impress her but to become the man you were too distracted to build when she was around. And the deeper you go into that mission, the less you even think of her. Not out of hatred, not out of bitterness, but because your mind is finally full of you. That's the transformation. That's the revenge. That's the quiet, undeniable power of a man who turns pain into purpose. You don't need her apology. You don't need her closure. You just need your edge back. And this time, you're not giving it away. Some women only realize your worth when your presence becomes something they can no longer touch. In the beginning, everything looks fine on the surface. She posts smiles. She's out late with friends. She's talking to new people, laughing in places you once stood beside her. But what seems like joy is often just noise to drown out the void you left behind. Because eventually, the silence creeps in. The nights grow longer, the faces blur. And it's then she begins to compare. Not consciously at first, but through the way she doesn't laugh quite the same. Through the moments she checks her phone and feels a flicker of disappointment that it's not you. The new men she entertains might have the looks, the charm, the resources, but they don't have your calm. They don't have your steady, unwavering energy. They don't move with the quiet confidence that made her feel secure. And over time, she starts to feel it. Not regret for leaving, but an ache for the version of you she thought would always be there. But you're not, because you've grown in silence. You've rebuilt in private. You're no longer the man who waited for her to see your value. You became the man who didn't need her to. And that difference is profound. See, most men try to make her miss them by performing, by posting, by texting, by trying to prove they've changed. But you did none of that. You just disappeared. Not in bitterness, but in evolution. And now she sees a man online or hears about you from mutual friends and he's not familiar anymore. He's sharper, calmer, stronger. He doesn't flinch at her memory. He doesn't post for her attention. He doesn't orbit her world anymore. You're a stranger now, but better. That's what gets under her skin. It's not that you're gone. It's that your glow has only gotten brighter without her. And now she realizes she's no longer a part of the world you're building. She's locked out of a future she once took for granted. The door hasn't been slammed in her face, it's simply no longer open. That quiet closure, that silent shift of power, it hits harder than any angry goodbye ever could, because you didn't scream, you didn't announce your departure, you just became unavailable. And in a world where everyone fights to be heard, your silence made the biggest impact. The irony? Now she's watching you the way you once watched her, curious, wondering, trying to decode if there's still space left in your life for her name to return. But you know better. You've moved on not to spite her, but to save yourself, and that is what she never saw coming. Because the strongest move a man can ever make is not to prove he's over her, but to be so deeply immersed in his growth that she becomes irrelevant to the path ahead. That's when she realizes the final truth. She didn't just lose a man, she lost the man you were becoming. And that man? He's no longer looking back. Some women don't truly feel your absence until you no longer exist in the world they once controlled. At first, she's confident, thinking she made the right decision, convinced you'd come back around like always. Maybe she checks her phone, expecting your name to pop up. Maybe she scrolls through your old photos, assuming she still lives rent-free in your mind. But as days turn into weeks and the silence deepens, something changes. You've gone from a man she could predict to a mystery she can't decode, and that mystery starts to bother her. You used to be available, maybe not always physically, but emotionally, energetically. You were there. You responded. You made space for her even when she didn't earn it. Now, she sees nothing. No likes, no messages, no signs of curiosity. She starts to wonder, have you really moved on? Are you finally done? And that uncertainty is what begins to unravel her confidence. Because women can handle rejection, they can handle anger, even silence for a while. But what they can't handle is the idea that you've upgraded without them. That your silence isn't just you hiding, it's you evolving. Quietly, consistently, away from her. She'll replay the moments, try to pinpoint when the control slipped. Wonder who you're becoming and who you're doing it with. And that's when the tables turn. See, men who stay quiet aren't weak, they're calculating. You didn't vanish to escape the pain, you vanished to rebuild. And now that you're rising, you're no longer looking back. She begins to miss a version of you that no longer exists. And deep down, she knows she has no access to the man you are becoming. That's the cruel beauty of self-respect. It turns you into someone unreachable to those who once took you for granted. When you detach emotionally, when you stop giving your energy away like it's limitless, you create space for growth, space for clarity, space for purpose. And she feels it. In the silence between her scrolling, in the hesitation before she posts, in the way she types a message and deletes it, realizing it won't reach who you used to be. That version of you, the one who waited, the one who forgave too quickly, the one who needed closure, is gone. Replaced by a man who no longer asks why she left, because he's too focused on where he's headed. And that quiet, focused version of you is what haunts her. Not because you hurt her, but because you outgrew her. That's the kind of silence she never expected. The kind that can't be ignored. The kind that makes her realize she didn't just lose you, she lost access to the man you never showed her you could be. And now, without saying a single word, you've become the man she can't reach, can't replace, and can't forget. Because the version of you she once knew no longer exists, and the version you've become is far beyond her grasp. That's not revenge. That's growth. And in the silence of your transformation, she's left to hear the one thing she never expected. Nothing. Absolute, powerful, undeniable, nothing. If this message hit deep, if you're ready to keep evolving in silence and strength, then don't just disappear, rise. Subscribe to the Stoic Room, like this video, and explore our playlist, Stoic Wisdom, Mastering Emotions and Inner Strength, to stay on the path. You've already let her go. Now, let's go even further.